Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sterling Live. We have two episodes this week, so I'm so excited because I get to do this twice. But my name is Caitlin Brower. I am Sterling's social media manager, and Sterling Live is our weekly live series where we come to you live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, just delivering great content. Another great episode today. As you can see, I have two amazing guests with me up top. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get into introducing our guests and introducing the topic. So today we are joined by Jenna Gardner. She is no stranger to the show. She's been on Sterling Live many times, but she's our people and experience leader. And then we also have today Emily Haverty, senior people and culture business partner. And our topic today is joining a new company in a virtual environment. So before we get into things, I would love if the two of you could formally introduce yourselves to our audience. So Jenna, since you've been here before, you know the deal. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. Thank you for having me on again. For those of you who haven't seen me before, I am Jenna Gardner, as Caitlin mentioned. I'm located in Washington, and I've been at Sterling for about 4.5 years. And currently, my role is employee experience and learning leader. And really, truly, it's about focusing on our employees and making sure their journey from beginning to end is really great. And recently took on learning, and that, the experience absolutely includes learning and making sure that people learn as they onboard, they can ramp up quickly, making sure we're developing our employees through learning opportunities. And yeah, that's what I do.
And very fitting for today's show because we are talking about a lot of experiences for employees, especially when joining a new company. Emily, welcome to the show for the first time. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Thanks. Yeah, glad to be here. I have been with Sterling for 3 months now. So myself, I'll be able to really share a lot of the experiences that I had for onboarding at a new company during at our virtual first organization. I support many different leaders here across the organization for recruiting, retaining, developing talent. And I am located in Omaha, Nebraska.
I think you're the first person from Nebraska to be on the show. So I'm very exciting. I should start writing that down where every, person is located. We've had people overseas and, I've got to start marking off the states within the United States. So this is great. So as I said earlier, our topic today is joining a new company in a virtual environment. I do want to remind our audience, if you are watching live now on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, you can ask Emily and Jenna questions. No need to ask me questions. I'm not going to give you the right answer, but you can ask the two of them questions in the comment section across the three of these platforms, and I will get your questions over to these two as I see fit throughout the show. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's get into this topic. So Emily, I'm going to go to you first, because I want to talk about just when you join a company, and especially in a virtual environment, just getting started. So it's plain and simple, just getting started. So Emily, what advice can you give for someone who has to prepare their workspace in a virtual environment?
Yeah, so for me, it was, definitely a mindset shift. I had, like probably everybody else on this call was, just kind of thrown into working from home and did that for a long period of time at my previous company. I was working from my kitchen table, but then as I knew that I was moving to a virtual first company and I would have to reset my workspace, working from my kitchen table wasn't going to work for me anymore. And so, there was an investment that I made in myself as far as, the equipment that I needed. I bought, a new comfortable chair rather than my kitchen chair. And so I did take it as an opportunity to reset myself, reset my space, and make sure that I had a comfortable work environment. And then the other piece that was really important to me as well was making sure that I had some private space, not only just for, limiting distractions throughout the day, but finding a way to be able to shut off for the day or, shut off for the weekend so that I'm not constantly, checking over at my computer. So I was lucky enough to be able to have, a space that I was able to dedicate, but I have friends from other companies that have put up a panel or something to just throw a divide between work and the rest of their life.
Yeah, we definitely have a similar experience because I too was working from my kitchen table and realizing that this was more permanent. I did make further investments with a standing desk, a little area. I love that panel idea though, because mine's kind of an open environment. So I do need to kind of shut off a bit. So I love that. It's a great example. So Jenna, from an employer standpoint, what can employers do to help new employees, prep this new type of workspace?
Yeah, that's a great question. But I also say I too was at my kitchen table for a bit, so we were all doing the same thing. From an employer perspective, like in my opinion, a personal space is like so personal.
Mhm.
Like my space is going to be so different from your space. Like I have my water, I have a candle going. I know that's a bit much, but I don't know. It just helps me.
I should probably no, that's a great idea. I might go light one right now.
Always on the look for a good candle. But from an employer perspective, I think it's so important that before a new employee starts, you procure and you send the equipment before their start date so that they have the time and the space to actually set up what they want it to be.
Right.
I mean, in my opinion, like there's nothing worse than starting virtually and like not having your equipment or getting it shipped late or whatever it is. And look, there are things that happens. UPS drops it off at the wrong house, or weather causes UPS to like not drop it off at the right time. Those are few and far between, but for the most part, you always want to make sure that you're sending the stuff so that they can make it their own space. I think that's really important. For us, that's like the laptop, the mouse, the screens, like all your basic equipment.
Jenna, just to add to that a little bit from my experience, I did receive my equipment in advance. And so, trying to be well prepared, I set it up the day before, but even the day of, I was, thankful that I wasn't overbooked from a meeting perspective as I started to have those one-on-ones. So I think advice to employers is even on the first day, if you've sent the equipment in advance, like limit what they're doing on their first day so that they can actually make sure that their setup works for what they will be doing on a day-to-day basis. Like I know the first day I had my laptop with my camera on the side of my face. I'm like, that's not going to work for the long term. So then I was able to adjust a little bit more too. So I think giving a little bit of flexibility and making sure that you're giving some time, even, those first couple of days is really important.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think it is a great, just kind of piece of advice, especially because, you went through it and you had that prime example of just like a simple thing, like a camera, like that's a little bit of an awkward angle. I need to fix that. So I think that's a great piece of advice for sure for employers. So a big thing, if we're thinking about traditional workspaces, we're thinking about things like networking with other colleagues. We're around the water cooler, we're getting coffee, we're talking to people. That's a big part of a workspace in, a work environment. So when you think about that virtually connecting with colleagues, networking and things like that, it can be a little challenging. People might not know where to start. So Jenna, I'm curious, what are some examples of what we're doing at Sterling that can really help new employees start to build out that network right away?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's definitely something that we had to quickly address when we went to this virtual environment. And I think, our approach was really trying to be multifaceted when we think about networking. So it was really about creating different like team channels that were global or regional. It was about like, mentorship programs and buddy programs and coffee chats and keeping in mind like, wow, we have so many things, but from an employee perspective, they might not join every single thing. So we wanted to like kind of hit a few different areas to make sure that everybody was at least having some type of way to network. And Emily, I was just going to bring up that I was your buddy, which I thought was great because I feel like we were able to network and I was able to push you out to other people and explain who you can get a hold of and whatnot. So yeah, from an employer perspective, it's, creating, in my opinion, creating multiple ways for people to network, not just one, tunnel vision way.
Yeah, I love that. And I do love the multiple options because, you might have someone who is super eager and does everything they can because they're trying all these different ways to build out a network. You're starting a new company, got to get your name out there. But some people might, maybe the role is that they're in, they might not have all the time to do all of that or just they don't want to, but the options are still there. So I absolutely love that. I do love that you brought up the buddy thing. I did that recently for one of my new colleagues within marketing. Well, I say recently, she actually joined a while while ago now, but it just
Last year.
seems like, I know, it seems like yesterday, to be honest, but I
Mhm.
loved it. And I loved the concept because when you join a company, you have so many questions. And sometimes I feel people maybe aren't as comfortable going to their direct manager every second of the day. So that's
Yeah.
why I loved it so much. And it wasn't always, all these technical questions. It was just getting to know people, getting to know me. And I really loved that. So I'm so happy Sterling does something like that. And I'm happy that you and Emily were together. So you did that. So Emily, transitioning over to you here. So, what is your advice, when joining a company to build out that network and, some experiences that you had at Sterling?
Yeah, so obviously I was very lucky to have Jenna as my buddy, but I think I also knew that I had to take it upon myself to help build my own network as
Right.
well. So it's kind of
Mhm.
starting small as far as, okay, Jenna, like who do you think that I should be connecting with? And then I would reach out to those people. And then it's, even as you would any other networking opportunity that you have, it's like, okay, I can connect with this person. Then who else do you recommend
Right.
that I connect with?
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it maybe is a little bit bold, but I did, even find some random people that I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me just do a simple meet and greet, set up
Good for
15
you.
minutes just
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hear a little bit about what their role is in the organization. It's like you have to find a different way to recreate what would naturally happen in a break
Mhm.
room setting if you were in the office.
Yes.
And the only way that I could find to do that was by simply reaching out and introducing myself, learning a little bit about what they do in the organization as well. And then I did want to circle back from an employer perspective. One of the things that has really helped a lot as well is where we're able to bring people on board at the same time in similar roles. So not only do you have your buddy, but if you're onboarding and learning new information at the same time as other people, then you can reach out to that person and be like, okay, I don't know that we learned this yet, or did you learn
Mhm.
this, or I missed this, and really kind of training each other from a peer-to-peer standpoint through an onboarding cohort or something like that, I think can be really effective as well. I was lucky to have a colleague that joined just a couple days before I did, and
Mhm.
she naturally became somebody that I was able to
Yeah.
learn with as well.
Well, you do have a lot in common. Joining a new company, you might not know everything. So I think that's, you gave a lot of great advice there. And I do, that one at the end really does stand out to me. It's not like, a couple days someone joined before you, but it's not like you're one person joining a large company and then no one gets hired after that. People do come, in groups. So I think that's great, for employers to understand, these are all your new hires. How can you, bring them together in some way?
And for the managers, it makes their job easier too,
A little
right?
bit.
Like you
Yeah.
have to be more planful and like in a virtual environment, feel like you have to like over plan what the onboarding experience will look like for each of your employees. So if you're able to do that in groups versus,
Mhm.
one person, and then another person, that will help you from a manager perspective as well.
Absolutely. So let's move into, continuing this employee experience because it's not just day one and, you're off to fend for yourself. The experience does continue. And obviously, we do have individuals like Jenna in their roles to really bring this experience to life. And you do a phenomenal job. So I'm going to start with you here with this question. So what is the best way or process to share cultural norms early on with new employees?
For me, your question, the key word is early on.
Mm.
You have to get as much information upfront as possible. And I think for us, we had built out this 12-week onboarding journey, and we were trying to slot as much information as we can in those weeks so they knew what is the meeting etiquette? How often do we
Mhm.
have town halls? What are the best ways to communicate? What channels do we communicate in?
Right.
It's so important to get it up front. I think one of the key things that we did is we made a virtual playbook and we housed it on our intranet, and it just went through everything from how do we interview to how
Mhm.
long do we interview for, what values do we implement during our interviews, to what ERGs do we have, and like some of that like isn't cultural, but a lot of it is. And if you can get it to them upfront rather than later, you're going to be able to see your employees ramp up quicker, because instead of
Mhm.
searching for it and asking, trying to network and asking a bunch of people,
Yeah.
it's just there. They know it's all on one page. It's during their 12-week onboarding journey, and they can utilize it. So definitely early on upfront.
Emily, do you have anything to add here?
The only other thing that I would add is the consistency of what you're providing early on, upfront, and throughout that journey as well, like making sure that the messaging all aligns. And then it's like, okay, this is how we behave around here. This is common, And so if I would have only heard that once, would have gone one ear out the other.
Yeah.
But because I did hear it so consistently over time, it really helped me to understand, the behaviors and some of the
Mhm.
cultural norms to expect.
Yeah, definitely. And I do love, all the points that both of you brought up because I think, we mold into a certain way of how we're going to work, how we're going to operate and be successful. But it is always good to know, okay, great. I'm starting day one. This is what 5,000 plus employees do on a daily basis.
Mhm.
This is how we talk to each other. This is the standard for this. So it really, because that does help you. Everyone works in a unique way, but understanding the standard and everything that goes on within an organization really helps you start going down the path you need to be successful. So I think that's great. Emily, I'll stay with you here for this last question for continuing the employee experience. How can employers support the shift of moving to a virtual mindset?
Yeah, I think what's really important is making sure that you're clear in your strategy and what does that look like, and
Mhm.
to communicate that as quickly and effectively as you can to your employees, so that they're not wondering, what is this future state. And that was one of the
Right.
things that I was, really impressed about our company, and led me to join, was that, okay, it was a remote first strategy. I understood that, and then being able to communicate along the way was really helpful for me.
Jenna, anything to add there?
No, Emily, honestly, you're spot on. I would just say communicate, 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 because
Mhm.
for a lot of us, we were in this in the beginning. I like so vividly remember. I was like, we're going to be on lockdown for 3 weeks, and then
Yeah.
we're going back to the office. And then it was like, oh wait, okay, we're having a second wave. Okay, this will be a little
Right.
bit longer. And we were living in this hybrid space. But I was so grateful to be part of a company that was really thoughtful in how they wanted to communicate and the strategy moving forward, because
Mhm.
there was a point where we actually wrote, Josh and our leadership wrote what we were going to do. And I
Mhm.
think that communication allowed people to like shift their mindset. Okay, we're a virtual first.
Yeah.
This is what it means moving forward. And the continued communication has been very important as we shifted through this pandemic and as it continues to shift for us. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Emily, I guess yeah, absolutely, you're right. Communicate.
Yeah, it's definitely important for sure because we can understand, and I think everyone does understand that this shift is constant. Things are changing. But if you do have certain things mapped out and certain things are concrete, that definitely does help with that mindset shift and really trying to accept things and move forward and be a little bit more grounded. So, and again, the
Yeah.
way you get that out there is constant communication because, again, things are going to change. So, when something does change, how are we adapting? Here's what we're doing. So, I think that's great. We did a great comment on Facebook. Just talking about some companies not being able to fully accept full
Yeah.
virtual environments and things like that. We did get a great compliment that we're doing a great job within creating a great
Oh,
culture and a virtual playbook. It says good for you. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for that shout out on Facebook. It's we really appreciate a lot of that. So because this isn't something that happened overnight.
yeah.
We're still working on it, but clearly
Yeah,
we're
it's a
doing
journey.
some of the right things, clearly. So love that comment. So thank you so much. So let's look ahead to the future a little bit. So Jenna, you just said this is a journey. So, we are
Yeah.
looking to the future. We clearly have learned a lot. So I want to dive into a little bit of that here. So Jenna, I will start with you. How has Sterling adapted to this virtual environment by bringing new employees in?
I mean, quickly, I will say, I think that it was very much like we need to be cognizant that this has drastically changed all of our processes from
Yep.
beginning to end, including onboarding. And I think what was great about Sterling in adapting to this, we were so mindful about every single step. It was
Yep.
literally like, okay, from the moment they get their offer letter to the moment they get their equipment to the emails that they're getting from their managers, really thinking through and being heartfelt and making sure that those processes are working. And look, it is a journey. We're still doing it. We're still reliving each step every single day so that we can continue to make it better,
Mhm.
because as you mentioned earlier, the landscape is continuously shifting, and we can't,
Yep.
I think in order to be successful in any company, you have to like shift with that.
Mhm.
um, So yeah, I think Sterling has done a great job, and it's really about being so intentional about not just the process. Okay, we're going to redo onboarding. It is every single step in that process that you have to relook and reimage.
Yeah, and I do have to give kudos, to your entire team, to the entire people and culture team. It's as an employee, like things have felt good, for a while now. And I think we are going in a direction. It is a journey, like you said. But I think that we have done a great job, and I can attest to it as an employee working here. While I didn't join, Emily did. She's already shared some great examples. But just, as current state employee, like we are doing great things. So definitely kudos to you and the team for that.
Thank you.
So let's look ahead to the future. So Emily, I'll come to you here first. So what does the future look like when an employee joins virtually a new company?
Yeah, I think this is a constant evolution and shift for everybody. So we're having to reimagine the way that work happens, and the biggest piece of that I really think is aligned to communications, back to what Jenna said before. But I think you can't underestimate the importance of documented communications and processes and procedures and confirmation. So I think following up with any sort of communications moving forward is really important in the way that that's standardized across organizations. And then the other piece that I think is just going to continue to evolve are the tools and resources that we continue to use. I was even on a call earlier today with employees, and they've, talked about some of the communication tools that we've implemented that help to better collaborate amongst cross-functional groups. So it's like, okay, how do we continue to utilize those tools more and maximize, what we're able to achieve based off of those tools?
Yeah, I love that you brought up, like a tool, like a stack, things like that, because those tools are going to have to update. So we're going to have to look at new things and how it can help us. But again, there's going to be probably new tools that are developed. So I think that's a great point to add there. So Jenna, in your mind, what does the future look like when an employee will join a company virtually?
I think for me, I'm looking at it like super far out, because I imagine a world where we aren't having these conversations, right? Where we have finessed it enough to make it be a smooth process. So when you say I'm joining a virtual company, it isn't like cringeworthy,
Right.
Because now I'm like, if I ever thought about leaving Star, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so scared to move to a virtual environment, because it's so new for so many people. And a lot of people are having these conversations on how do we make it better. And I think the end goal is, it is just part of the process. You onboard, it goes smoothly. And it's going to be a journey. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but that's my goal. But I think, Emily, to your more tactical points, I think those are really great suggestions.
Yeah. And I hope that too. We won't be saying I'm joining a virtual company. I'm just joining. I've got a new job. I'm so excited. I'm joining a company. So love that for sure. So I do want to remind our audience, if you are watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube right now, if you do have any final questions for Emily and Jenna, please go ahead and send them through the comment section right now. As we wait for any final questions to come in, I do want to gather some final thoughts from the two of you. This has been a tremendous conversation over the last 22 minutes or so. So Emily, we'll start with you, final thoughts for our audience.
I think I didn't mention this anywhere throughout, but I think if you are onboarding new employees to your organization, be patient with them as they are trying to learn and navigate in a different way. So not only are they, learning a new organization, but they're trying to build new relationships and figure out, before you'd, pop over to somebody's cube and be like, hey, who do you know? So then it's like, am I interrupting somebody if I'm sending them a message, or what does that look like? So the more support, more patience, more guidance, more communications and check-ins you can provide to your employees as you support them, even if they've been there for a long time. I also don't think you can underestimate the value of reaching out and connecting with them on a regular basis, so that they don't start to feel like they're on an island as well. I know I talked a lot from a new hire perspective and onboarding, but I also think making sure that you're regularly connecting with those that have been there a long time to make sure they feel supported is really important too.
I love that. I think that's great. Jenna, final thoughts for our audience.
I think, Emily, I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what you said. I think from my perspective, it is touching base post onboarding. So like, surveys, like do a 90-day survey. Be like, Emily, how was your journey? What can we do better? And Emily, to your point, don't just focus on your new employees, focus on your current population to make sure that they're still okay. They're not feeling isolated. They're getting the things they need to be successful. And that's really about like engagement, pulse surveys, like the things you might do on a quarterly or annual basis. But it's such a good way to get feedback and try to move the needle in the right directions. Because if you're not touching base or asking for feedback, you're not going to progress, in my opinion. So, that would be my 2 cents.
Absolutely. Well, you both provided a lot of sense during the show. I will admit that. So, but that's great. Great way to wrap up the show today. At this time, we don't have any further questions or comments. So I do want to thank you both, Jenna and Emily, for joining me today for this episode of Sterling Live. I thought it was very insightful, very real time topic because a lot of people are going through this right now. So I hope that new hires, whether they're for Sterling or other organizations that are joining a virtual environment right now, we're able to get a lot out of this show, but also employers as well. The two of you provided great tips and best practices for employers as they bring on new hires, in this remote virtual area. So I want to thank you both so much. I want to thank our audience live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, or if you're watching this on demand, thank you as always for joining Sterling Live. But again, Emily and Jenna, thank you so much. This was a great episode.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.